Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay Sporting Goods, the Yider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Garber Chevrolet, the West Branch Visitors Bureau, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine radio show right here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan, and so glad to have you along with us as we celebrate this outdoor lifestyle once again. The tradition of hunting and fishing and shooting and trapping and all such things that are so wonderful, so enjoyable, so much fun. They give us so much to look forward to. They help us put food on the tables. They help us just enjoy our time in the outdoors, enjoy our time here on this earth. And so many of us are addicted to this outdoor lifestyle. That's what this show is about. Hunting and fishing and shooting and trapping and wild game cooking and conservation issues and wildlife issues. Once in a while, we delve into the politics of the outdoors, but politics in general, I stay away from. And I've had several people say, hey, why don't you have such and such on your show or such and such on your show? And the reason is I have a no politician rule on the Outdoor Magazine radio show. Now, no politicians. It's not. Look, I have many friends who are politicians. I have friends who I consider are very good politicians. They get things done, and I think they're good people. But I do not want to open the door of having politicians here on the radio show, because once you crack that door, you can't close it, and that's not a door I want to open. I'm just not interested. About as close as we get to that is when we have folks from MUCC on to help us unpack the political side of things. In fact, coming up this week, Steve Windom of MUCC will join us later in the show. More on that in just a couple of minutes. First of all, congrats to everybody at the Black Lake chapter of Sturgeon for Tomorrow. They wrapped up their successful sturgeon shivaree. It was the quickest sturgeon fishing season ever. Anglers speared 7 fish in just 17 minutes. Hey, they were just glad to have ice. The sturgeon fishing / spearing was a bonus. But they had good ice and good fishing and 17 fish in 7 minutes. Or 7 fish in 17 minutes. Shortest season ever. So congrats to Jay and crew at the Black Lake chapter of Sturgeon for Tomorrow. I did some fishing this week. Some rather unusual fishing. I told you last week that I had an invitation from my son James to go out on Saginaw Bay ice fishing for walleye. I used to ice fish for walleye on Saginaw Bay, and I'm an avid summertime Saginaw Bay walleye troller. But I've been thinking about it. How long has it been since I was on Saginaw Bay fishing for walleye through the ice? 20 years? 25 years? I mean, it's been a long time. And I guess several reasons why. Number one, I don't have the equipment to get out there. I don't have a big quad. I don't have a snowmobile. And I don't want them. I don't want to deal with the hassle of the maintenance and the cost and all that, because I wouldn't use it that much. So I don't have a way to get out there. I don't have the gear once I'm out there. I don't have the big heated shanty. And also, I just really don't have the desire. I get it that it's fun, but it's not one of my passions. But when my son invited me and said, hey, you want to go out fishing? We got the gear. We can get you out there. Do you want to go? I said, absolutely. So I went out there with my son, James, riding along with Mike Smith of Offshore Account. He is a charter captain. He's a summertime charter captain, and he's a fishing guide in the wintertime on the ice. And I got to tell you, it was indeed an adventure. And it was really cool. I mean, just getting out there is an adventure. I mean, we were something like, I don't know, I didn't pull up on my GPS, maybe 9 miles offshore from where we took off on the west side of Saginaw Bay. We did it safely, but we did cross some cracks. I hadn't been on a snowmobile in years and years either. So, I mean, just the process of getting out there was a pretty cool adventure. And we hadn't even started fishing yet. So we get out there initially to about 21 feet of water. And I'm just standing there twiddling my thumbs because I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do anything. So I'm watching my son James taking care of the old guy. Isn't it interesting how in life, when you're growing up, when we're younger, we take care of the kids and show them how to do things and set things up for them. Now, in this situation, because it was foreign to me, James took care of me. I mean, as I stood there and watched him, and I tried to help him as much as I could, but, first time around, I didn't know what to do. He sets up the shanty. He sets up the electronics. He drills the holes. There was like 14 inches of good ice. Wasn't worried about the ice at all. Gets me set up and then goes and sets up his shanty. Thank you, James. Oh. And it was pretty cool because you could see I had a jig and spoon tipped with a minnow. You could see it on the bottom. Every time you jig it up, you could see it on the electronics. But no action out there in 21 feet of water. Mike got a hot tip. He said, come into 19 feet. There's fish biting. So we packed everything up. Drove in a couple miles, whatever it was, to 19 feet of water. Now I knew how to set things up, right? So I set the shanty up, and this time I was actually useful. I didn't drill the holes because I didn't have an auger, but they drilled them for me. Mike drilled them for me. Get set up in there. It's nice and warm. There's no wind. No wind at all. It was an absolutely beautiful day. Just after we got set up, I actually got checked by a conservation officer, which was pretty cool. I haven't been checked by a CO in years. Chris out of Tuscola County. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate your professionalism and doing your job. Thank you for that. He didn't even ask me for a license. There is a certain art, because I used to work with these guys years and years ago as a VCO, a volunteer conservation officer. When you roll up on somebody or you pull up on somebody or you peek into somebody's shanty, you can pretty much tell by their demeanor and their actions whether they're legit and above board and lawful. So I guess I passed the test because he didn't even ask me for my license. We shot the breeze a little bit and he took off. But I think Chris brought us luck because shortly after Chris left, the fish started to turn on. I got a dead stick down there with a minnow just off the bottom, and I'm jigging a rod. Now I could have jigged 2 rods, but I figured why look for tangles? So I'm jigging away. I'm watching my jig on the bottom, kind of daydreaming, just kind of enjoying the experience. And I looked down at the graph, and you could see a fish come through. I'm like, oh, that's what a fish looks like. So I kept jigging and jigging. I watch another one comes in. I'm jigging. It's hard now when you see them come in not to increase your cadence, right? But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to keep up the same thing. Jigging, boom, there's a fish. Pretty good size fish, too. I mean, and a nice wintertime fish with a big belly on it. I get that fish up to the hole. I get him on the ice. I'm thinking, man, this is fun. Now, as much as I love to troll for walleye, there's something about having that rod in your hands when a fish hits that you just can't beat. Throughout the evening, I think I caught 5 fish. I missed 2 just because I was stupid and daydreaming. Eventually, Mike Smith comes into the shanty with me, and he sets up his Garmin forward-facing sonar unit, the highest tech thing for fishing in the universe. We set that up. And now you can see fish, you can really clearly see fish swimming in from the right, swimming in from the left. You can watch them swim around your bait. You can see you hook a fish, bring it to the surface. You can see when you miss a fish. It was a pretty cool experience. Now, again, it's not something that I'm going to become addicted to. It's not something I want to do every weekend. But occasionally, you bet, as long as I go out there with the right guys, it was a lot of fun. Okay, speaking of fun, our big Trinity Monitor Wild Game Dinner and Auction is coming up Saturday, March 1st. This is to benefit our church and school. You can get tickets online. Go to my Facebook page, Mike Avery Outdoors. Very clearly show you there. Live auction, silent auction, a lot of guns. We're auctioning off an African safari, an Illinois whitetail hunt, a shoulder mount from Scott Keatsman, a bear hunt from Johnny Bowler, the Bear Whisperer, a lot of guns, a knife from Chris Durson at Rapid River Knives, Wraith Blinds, a coyote hunt from Matt Schock, a truck trolley from Andy Weiss, 3 different youth hunts, a day of walleye fishing with me on Saginaw Bay aboard the New Angler Quest in the summertime, something I'm much more comfortable and familiar with than ice fishing, launch pass from Linwood Beach Marina. Just all kinds of things. Don't hesitate, though, because we will sell out as we do every year, and the event is Saturday, March 1st. So thank you to our sponsors, and thank you to you who have bought your tickets. If you want to join us, please do, but don't wait. Coming up in this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show after the break, Steve Griffin talks about the basics of ice fishing. Ben Nielsen from Showspan on the big Outdoorama show coming up here in a couple of weeks. Then Mike Smith in hour number 2 of Offshore Account joins me to talk about our fishing adventure and much more. Then Steve Windom of MUCC. This week's Ask Avery question, I think it's going to be a threefer. Not just one question, not just 2, not a twofer, but a threefer, I think. And then in our third hour, Jason Herbert talks about shedding. He says he's a shed hunting nerd to look for shed whitetail antlers. He's pretty darn good at it. And, of course, we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. My name is Mike Avery. This show is called Outdoor Magazine. My website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address is Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know what's on your mind, what you like, what you don't like. Send me your pictures of your outdoor adventures, and I will share them on my Facebook page. Lots coming up this week right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Alpena on WZTK. That's 105.7 FM. You can hear us in Battle Creek on WBCK 95.3 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Iron Mountain, WMIQ 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by VersaSkins. Just change your skin for the season you're in. I actually wore my VersaSkins jacket when I was out ice fishing on Saginaw Bay the other day because it's the warmest coat that I have. I did snap off and zip off the outer blaze orange shell that I had on it for deer season, but it was pretty cool to be able to do that. I mean, in less than a minute, you can change your skin. You can go from no shell at all to blaze orange to snow camel or whatever it is. In less than a minute. Snap on and zip on an outer shell. So why buy a bunch of different sets of expensive hunting clothes when you can buy one good quality set and change their skin for the season you're in? Go to the website versaskins.com. That's versaskins.com, where you can find them also on Amazon, amazon.com, and do a search for VersaSkins brand. Michigan-based, family-owned, you know I love that. So yes, I actually was on the ice last weekend, something that just does not happen very often. When I was a kid, I used to spend a lot of time ice fishing, primarily on smaller inland lakes for panfish. And I'm really missing the opportunity by not getting out there today, and I know that. Steve Griffin is a hardcore ice fisherman. He loves to target panfish on these smaller inland lakes, and he's very good at it because he's been doing it forever. And he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Steve, welcome. How are you?
Thanks, Mike. I'm doing great. How are you, my friend?
I couldn't be better. I'm doing great. Absolutely great. Absolutely great.
We were concerned for your health and glad that you're on the rebound.
Yeah. I mean, last fall, just before October, for folks who haven't heard, I did have a stroke, and it was not a minor stroke, but medical miracles and God's grace and a lot of prayers got me through. So I appreciate you asking, Steve. But I'm doing just great, and I was good enough to be on the ice of Saginaw Bay the other day, and I'm looking around me thinking Steve Griffin would think this is a foreign world to you because of all the electronics and the forward-facing sonar. You like to do things old school, don't you?
Well, I like both. I did a revision of my ice fishing book. I wrote a book in 1985 called Ice Fishing Methods and Magic, and it occurred to me and to the publisher Stackpole that entire world of ice fishing has changed since 1985. Back then, there were not portable shelters commercially made. There weren't rods and reels commercially made specifically for ice fishing. There was no electronics. I mean, the whole world has changed, and I embrace the new, but I'm still charmed by the old and simple. And sometimes I embarrass myself. I took my 8-year-old grandson ice fishing a week or two ago, and we went with a hand auger, and we went without the electronics. And he had been out a time or two before, and he confessed he kind of missed the electronics to watch the fish on, and he kind of missed the flexibility of moving easily with a power auger, because you just don't get around to moving as much. So both approaches have great applications in today's opportunities to ice fish. The thing that we have this year is we have a little more ice than we have the last couple, and that to me makes more difference than anything else.
Yeah, isn't it nice? I mean, probably the best ice in several years, especially the smaller inland lakes, which you have a tendency to target, don't you?
I do like the small inland lakes. I like some of the bigger inland lakes, too. I've had great times on Crystal and Higgins and some of those places. I do like seeing the shoreline. That's I have to admit, I'm not the world's biggest fan of Saginaw Bay. It intimidates me. I know of people who've had problems out there. I also know of many, many more people that have wonderful times out there. I'll get out a couple of times a season, but I'm not the guy on the snowmobile going 12 miles out there jumping cracks to do it. That's just not me. I'm a little mellower than that, I guess.
But it doesn't diminish your ice fishing experience to stay inland at all, does it?
Oh, absolutely not. You're more flexible. If you go on the big waters, you have to wait for the ice to form, first of all, which is 2 or 3 weeks later, and then you have to watch the winds and everything else. And with the inland lakes, you're generally hunkering down in a little a low spot and protected from the elements, and there's usually a lot of fish available if you can figure out how to make them go. And they're delicious. So it's a great way to fish.
And what types of fish, Steve? Are we talking just panfish? We talking pike? What?
Well, I really like bluegill fishing, and crappies go right with them. I haven't had the success with perch that some do because I haven't focused on them that much. I like to pike fish, both with tip-ups, and I like to spear pike. That's a great opportunity. We call it fishing and hunting combined, because you're kind of waiting to ambush a fish much as you would with a bow or a rifle for a terrestrial animal that you were after. So, but I think bluegills would be my number one choice if limited to one species, which would be a terrible affliction, but that's how I would solve it.
And as you say, bluegills through the ice out of that cold water are just outstanding.
No, they're just great. They're just absolutely delicious. Yep.
So when you walk out on one of these inland lakes, whether it's a small lake or one of the bigger lakes, how do you target bluegills? First of all, where do you start? Where do you find them?
Usually, I look for evidence of some kind of weed bed. Bluegills like structure. They like the critters that grow in the weeds. And where the weeds give way to open bottom, which is on the deep side of the weed bed, that seems to be a pretty good spot to start. In most lakes, that's going to be 8 feet, 10 feet, 12 feet of water, depending on the water clarity. But where the weeds no longer grow, that's the edge that you want, I think.
And then what does your setup look like? What do you got on the end of your line?
Well, gosh, that hasn't changed as much over the years. Typically, it's a small jig of one form or another. The lead-headed jigs that are available now are better than the old ones. They have better finishes. You can get them in tungsten, different materials. But it's generally a lead-headed jig to which we add a small bit of bait, a wax worm, a spike, a mousey, something like that. Or plastics have come on really strong in the last 10 years, too. Plastic imitations of those. They actually have more movement in the water than the live bait does. And there's days that the bluegills just line up to get caught on small plastic grubs.
Do those plastics have scent in them, too? Does that help?
Yeah, some of them do. I don't know how much it helps. I think the motion of the plastic helps as much as anything. But scent certainly couldn't hurt if it's good scent. You know, we were always careful not to get gasoline on our fingers or anything like that to impart a bad scent to a bait. So I have to think that a good scent would be an advantage.
Okay, so you're on the outside edge of a weed bed. You're in like 8 to 10 feet of water. Are you jigging, and are you jigging off the bottom like we do walleye? Are you fishing suspended fish? What's that look like?
Well, it depends. If you're using electronics and you can identify suspended fish, that shortens the search. But typically, I would start near bottom and then gradually try higher and higher and higher till I was maybe halfway up. Because sometimes you will find suspended fish that way. That's the way I was taught long ago before there were electronics. And I'd say back then we'd probably spend 2/3 of our time fishing within a foot or so of bottom, and then trying the different depths just to see if it happened to be the day when the fish were cruising higher. That cruising higher more commonly happens with crappies than with bluegills, but either species can sometimes be found up there.
Will crappies and bluegills hang around together?
They will. There's a lot of lakes that only have good numbers of one or the other. I'm thinking back to the lakes we lost to Sanford and Wixom Lakes, where they freely mixed. So that, again, that's where I grew up ice fishing. So I was accustomed to catching 25 fish, and there'd be 15 bluegills and 10 crappies, or the reverse. Yeah, it would be a nice bucket of fish. I was a little greedier then. I would fish till I got my limit and keep my limit. And now I generally will keep 6 or 8 fish for a wonderful fish fry for my wife and I, and then catch and release, especially the bigger bluegills, because they're such great predators, great controls on the small ones that keep from having a stunted population.
Isn't it interesting how we evolve as hunters and anglers over the years, how we approach what we're doing and how we approach what we take home at the end of the day? And almost everybody I've talked to who is older says the same thing.
Yeah, I don't know how much of that is a change in us individually or a change in the fishing society. You never used to hear much of catch and release, and then it came on strong with the trout fishermen. And then tournament bass fishing arrived, and that really spread the message further. And now it's pretty darn common to run into that, to the point where you'll sometimes take some grief, say if you're steelhead fishing and decide to keep one, you'll have people pester you about it, which, oh well.
Hey, we're talking with...
As long as it's legal, it's fine.
Exactly. We're talking with Steve Griffin, a noted outdoor writer and fishing expert. Steve, you talked about your books. We got to take a break and we'll talk more after that. But where do we get your books? Where do we find you? You got a website or what? What's this all, the details?
I wish I did, and you've talked to me before suggesting that I get one going, and I haven't yet. So I did see books at Barnes & Noble. Stackpole is the publisher of my book, and they're available there. And maybe I'll slip you a note as to where people could contact me if they wanted to acquire a signed copy, if that's okay with you.
Oh, of course. That sounds good. We're talking with Steve Griffin, a guy who's been ice fishing a long time. Steve, hang tight. We've got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, we'll wrap up that conversation with Steve. And then at the end of the hour, we'll talk with Ben Nielsen of Showspan, talking about the big Outdoorama show that's coming up at the Suburban Collection Showplace. That's a mouthful, isn't it? The Suburban Collection Showplace in Novi. Why don't they just call it the Novi Expo Center? Oh, they used to. That's right. Anyway, we'll talk about that and more coming up in our second hour. Mike Smith, the guy that I went out on Saginaw Bay with the other day, a completely different experience than Steve is talking about. Steve Windom of MUCC, this week's Ask Avery segment. And in hour number 3, we're looking for shed whitetail antlers with Jason Herbert. And, of course, we'll wrap up the show with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. That's all coming up this week right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show on more than 30 stations across the great state of Michigan, including WKYO in Caro, 1360 AM, and WIDL in Caro, 92.1 FM. You can hear us in Port Huron, WPHM, 1380 AM, and north of the bridge in Newberry, WNBY, 1450 AM. We're talking right now with Steve Griffin about ice fishing. I mean, good old-fashioned, simple, easy, straightforward ice fishing on inland lakes for panfish or maybe pike. Steve, when you're doing this, we're still targeting panfish at this point. What's your terminal tackle look like? How big is that jig, and what pound test are you using?
I'm usually using 3 or 4 pound test. The new lines are splendid. Fluorocarbon is virtually invisible. So I don't think it's quite as critical as it used to be, but I do like 3 or 4 pound tests. We used to go down to 2 pound. That's a little tougher to deal with. It gets tangled. Again, it's just difficult. So 3 or 4 pound test, a little jig, maybe a size 10, a size 12. I try not to add weight to the line if I can help it. I used to use bobbers. That's the way I was taught to fish. We'd use them. We'd be out in the open. So you could just pull the line up by hand and toss it onto the ice. In a shelter, which we use most of the time now, that's a little more difficult. You're probably using a rod and reel, and so the bobber would get caught at the tip-top guide. So usually I'll use it like a wire strike indicator at the end, and it will dip a little bit or rise a little bit if you get a soft bite. And that's really all you need. You're all set to go when you have that rig.
So you're not feeling the bite always as much as seeing it on some kind of a bite indicator then?
Yeah, and I think for me that's always been the case. The guy that taught me to fish pointed out to me that at the bottom side of a small ice fishing bobber, your line would make just a little tiny bend. He taught me to watch that bend so that if it stretched out tight from a bite or if it became even more bent from a fish biting and rising a little bit, you'd detect that. So I have never really paid much attention to the feel of a bite on the ice. It's mostly line watching or strike indicator watching for me.
You said, talk to me about pike and tip-up. So you said you haven't had a lot of success with that?
No, I have. I just don't get around to setting tip-ups as often as I probably should because I'm so eager to get to my pan fishing, and once that gets going, I can't tear myself away to go set tip-ups. But I do very much enjoy tip-up fishing. I do that a little bit for trout on larger inland lakes as well, where I won't even jig at all. I'll just set now it's 3 tip-ups and spend all day watching them and moving them around. I'm never leaving a tip-up for more than half an hour or so in a spot if it doesn't pay off.
So when you do that... Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, there's no kind of ice fishing that I don't like, really.
Well, the tip-ups for trout really has my attention now. So are you using a live minnow for bait, I'm assuming?
Yeah. Yep, usually a gray minnow. We haven't had the luck with shiners that we have using them for pike. So we're putting them down near the bottom in 70, 80, 100 feet of water, 150 feet of water sometimes, usually running the line through a barrel swivel so that when the fish takes the bait, barrel sinker. So when a fish takes the bait, that drops to the bottom and the line feeds through it freely. It's a pretty successful approach to catching trout.
150 feet?
Yeah, for lake trout and splake. Wow. Yeah. Not every lake has that kind of depth, but usually when you get to 70 feet or so, you're down in lake trout or splake water. If you're fishing for browns, you can come up a little higher. Same way with rainbows, can be in shallower water.
So
but it's the Lakers that really get me going.
I'm fascinated by this. So you're using a treble hook and hooking the minnow through the back, or what? Yeah,
a small treble, maybe a size 10, size 12, through the back so that it remains active. Drop the weight all the way to the bottom and then raise it up a few feet so that you're confident that the minnow's not burrowing into the bottom or hiding there in what little bit of weed growth there might be or whatever. So you want it visible to the fish, a foot or a couple feet off bottom. And as I say, You'll find one spot, if there's going to be a day of activity, you'll find one spot that produces almost all the fish. So your main goal is to find that hole in the ice, and that means moving every tip up, every half hour, 45 minutes if it hasn't paid off, trying to find that hot spot.
And then you're hand lining that fish in?
Yeah, generally, you'll hand line it in. If you've got a partner with you, he or she can be putting the line back on the reel as you gain it from the fish, and then let some out if the fish makes a run again. That just makes it easier to get set back up so that your line doesn't get tangled or frozen to the ice.
That's what I'm thinking. With that much line, I'm going to make a mess. I know I am.
Well, by the time your first trip out there is done, you will learn to always have the wind at your back, so that as you pull line up and toss it a little bit up in the air, the wind will take it out away from you and keep it from tangling as much.
All these little things you learn over the years. Steve Griffin, you're one of the best out there. I appreciate your time, and I will look forward to talking again. And I'd love to get you out in Saginaw Bay this summer on the Angler Quest if you got time.
Oh, I will make time, Mike, and I sure do thank you for that.
I appreciate that. Steve Griffin talking about ice fishing, the basics of ice fishing. Check out his new book as well. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, Ben Nielsen of Showspan checks in with a preview of the big Outdoorama. Is it Outdoorama, Outdoorama? I go through this every year. I'm going to stick with Outdoorama, because I think that's what the spot says. Anyway, Ben Nielsen coming up after the break to wrap up this first hour of this week's Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold, WCBY, 1240 AM, 100.7 FM. You can hear us in St. Joe on WSJM, 94.9 FM. And north of the bridge, let's go to Marquette this time, WDMJ, 1320 AM. Well, you just heard that spot, that commercial, for Outdoorama, coming up here in just a couple of weeks at the Suburban Collection Showplace in Novi. One of the reasons that show is able to come to fruition is a guy named Ben Nielsen. Ben works with Showspan, a company that's been doing outdoor shows forever, and he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Ben, welcome back. Didn't we talk just, it seems like a couple of weeks ago, about the Ultimate Fishing Show?
It seems like yesterday we were talking about that. So the ad you had got me all pumped up there, too, so I'm ready to go here.
Welcome to your world, though, right? I mean, you're running from one show to another this time of year.
That is true, yes. We do a lot of shows in the first quarter of the year, and it's one to another, but we love it.
I know you do. I can tell, and I don't think you'd be able to be as good as you are at this if you didn't have a passion for it. So let's talk specifically for a minute here about Outdoorama coming up. This was a show that MUCC had for a lot of years. You guys at Showspan took it over, and I think the folks even at MUCC would agree that it's a better show under your direction.
Well, I appreciate hearing that, and it's something that obviously we work on all year, and we're looking forward to another great show this year. Obviously celebrating the outdoors with Outdoorama, and there's going to be a lot of really cool things there this year.
I guess I haven't even said when is the date for this?
Yeah, February 20 to 23, so it's coming up pretty quick here.
20 to 23 at the Suburban Collection Showplace in Novi. How is this different than the Ultimate Fishing Show there a few weeks ago?
Well, exactly that. The Ultimate Fishing Show is just fishing, right? We talk about fishing rods, fishing boats, fishing, everything fishing. Outdoorama is really more about the outdoors. So there is some fishing there, and we do have quite a few different boats there and things like that, but it's also the hunting side. And it really has a strong tradition of being a great show as far as outfitters go. So there's a lot of different outfitters there, a lot of different places you can go and book a trip and go on like the hunt of a lifetime kind of thing. There's also a lot more as far as, hunting apparel, hunting merchandise, and then also fishing stuff, lots of things to get there as well. So there's plenty of things to look for when you're there.
So if I come into the Outdoorama show, I can actually, if I find the right outfit or the right booking agent, I can set this ball rolling. I can book a trip for this fall even, I would imagine.
Put the deposit down and go. Absolutely. As long as they still have availability, obviously. And a lot of them have lots of spots open. I mean, this is what they do this time of year is travel around to these shows. So there's a lot of great opportunities there.
Ben, from your perspective, how is the outdoor industry doing in general? I mean, we've had some ups and downs. COVID actually helped us out a lot, then it leveled off. What are you seeing these days?
I think it's strong. And obviously I've got my finger on the pulse there. I talked to a lot of different dealers, whether it's boat dealers, tackle shops, all those different factors. They're doing well. Obviously this winter we've seen a nice push because we've actually had some winter. So the ice fishing side has kind of gotten reinvigorated from that. So that's been really, really strong. Lately boats were a little rough there about a year ago. We kind of came through a little rough spot there. But that side of things is going really well right now. So the future's looking really strong.
Okay, so the big Outdoorama show coming up February 20th to 23rd. Let's look down the road a little bit after that. You wrap up your season basically with that huge show in Grand Rapids, 75 years or some crazy number now? When's that coming up?
Here's a number, right, yeah. 80th annual this year. 80th annual. Yeah, it's outstanding. And we couldn't be happier about that. And so, yeah, the sports show in Grand Rapids is going to happen. The dates of that show, so that we get that right, are March 13 to 16 at DeVos Place, downtown Grand Rapids. And, kind of the show that started it all for our company, obviously, 80th year, right? So we're looking forward to that one as well.
80 years, wow. Well, listen, my hope for you is that all of your shows last for 80 years, and I would hope that maybe at the end of that 80 years that you have retired and moved on and you're watching them from the outside at that point.
Yeah, that'd be good. I'm hoping I make it to that, right? So, yeah, they're doing great, and we love doing them, and we love seeing everybody there. I love being around fellow outdoorsmen, and so there's nothing better than being at these shows.
One thing, real quick, I don't think we touched on: are there seminars at the Outdoorama show?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. All of our shows we do seminars. So again, this year we're going to have seminars. Some of the popular guys are going to be back, whether it's Mark Martin or Lance Valentine. Tom Richardson's doing a bunch as far as deer hunting goes. We're going to have a couple of new ones mixed in there. I'll kind of, let that secret out there. But, there are going to be some great seminars planned for this year, yes.
Excellent. Ben Nielsen of Showspan. Look forward to the Outdoorama show coming up February 20th, 23rd. Details on the website, showspan.com, showspan.com. And don't forget, put on your calendar the big show in Grand Rapids coming up March 13th through the 16th. Ben, I will let you go because I know you are always busy, but I'll look forward to talking again.
All right. Thank you very much.
Ben Nielsen of Showspan. Again, the website is showspan.com. Now, Ben might say, well, go to outdoorama.com. I just say go to the website, showspan.com, because there you can see all of the shows, and you can click on the show that you are specifically interested in. Plus, it's just easier for me to say showspan.com. I'm not against easy. All right, that'll wrap up this first hour of this week's show. When we come back in hour number 2, Mike Smith of Offshore Account Sportfishing. Mike is the guy who I went out on Saginaw Bay with last weekend, but he's a very knowledgeable guy. He's an up-and-comer in the fishing charter business. He's a guy that I stay in contact with in the summer months as well, out there when we're open water trolling. Then Steve Windom of MUCC, and this week's Ask Avery segment. That's not just one question. It's not just two. It's not a twofer. It's a threefer. Figure out that word, and we'll talk about it coming up in hour 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by J Sporting Goods, the Yider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Garber Chevrolet, the West Branch Visitors Bureau, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Indeed, this is the big guy, Mike Avery. Thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show, right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. And I do believe the best way to listen to this show, if you can, is on your local radio station, your local AM or FM station. You get your local news and weather and sports and even your local commercials. Maybe there's a sale or something you want to take advantage of. Plus, my broadcast stations get the content of the show before I upload the podcast. I look at the podcast as a backup. You know, some people don't have a radio show. They only have a podcast. I have a radio show and a podcast as a backup. So if you can't hear the radio show, if your local station doesn't carry all 3 hours of the show, or if you live in some part of our state not covered by the broadcast signal, you can hear the podcast. And the podcast is the same content. It's just available later and in different sources. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine podcast on my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. It's also on my Facebook page, Mike Avery Outdoors. It's on Amazon Music, Audible, Twitter, now called X, LinkedIn, Apple Music, Google Play, iHeart, yada, yada, Player, Deezer, Odyssey, even on YouTube. And yes, I do put the audio of the radio show on YouTube, and each week people listen to it. Watch it, listen to it. I don't know what you would say. I do like podcasting, though. Each month I do podcasts for some of my advertising partners, and today, when we're done recording this week's radio show, we will record this month's offshore tackle podcast with Jason Graham of Send It Charters, Linwood Beach Marina. I also talked with Jason for the Angler Quest podcast. Now he's going to be on the Offshore Tackle podcast. Jason, a very interesting guy and a guy that I have much respect for. Another guy I have much respect for is another Saginaw Bay charter captain. His name is Mike Smith of Offshore Account Charters. Mike is the guy that I went out on Saginaw Bay with last weekend. I told you, my son James says, look, come on, you got to come out here with us. And when your son says, let's go fishing, you really want to take him up on it. And I had a chance to spend some time with Mike. And I talk with Mike a lot in the summertime because he's a charter captain. He's out there a lot. He also likes to fish skinny water. So I'm always talking back and forth with him. But this is my first time on the ice of Saginaw Bay with Mike. And it was a very fun, very interesting experience. And he joins us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line to talk more about this. Hey, Mike, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, listen, thanks for having me out on the ice last weekend. That was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. I hope we get to do it again soon.
Well, how long is the ice going to last out there? What's your best guess?
If that wind doesn't get us, we've got a few more weeks probably a couple weeks into March, I'm thinking.
Would you rather be out there in the open water trolling or out there on the ice?
I do love my trolling, but there's just something about the whole adventure of the ice fishing from, like you said, from start to finish, leaving the landing and catching those fish on a short rod. It's just an entirely different experience.
It is an adventure. I'm glad you describe it that way because that's the way I look at it, especially for a guy who hadn't done it in a lot of years, who doesn't do it on a regular basis. Just the process of getting out there on the sleds, out to the fishing, to the good fishing, I mean, that is an adventure in itself.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot involved with that. There's a lot of prep work that goes into being ready to do that day in and day out and do it successfully and keep people safe.
See, that's where I think a guy like you is so valuable because you can have your own sled, you can have your own shanty, you can have all the electronics. But if you don't have the experience in knowing where to go and how to get out there safely, so I'm thinking a guy like me, rather than go out and buy my own sled, my own shanty and stuff, if I was really interested in this, I would hire a guy like you or a guy like Jason Graham or somebody like that a couple, 2, 3, 4 times a year and still come out ahead financially and have a great experience and know that I'm in good hands.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can attest to that with the amount of maintenance and repairs and stuff that we have to do to upkeep our fishing gear. And, for the last 2 years, mine sat in a trailer with minimal ice out there. So to own that kind of stuff and have it sitting on the sidelines can be somewhat of a financial burden. So absolutely, the day-to-day pricing for a few days a year, that's where it's at.
And I got to believe day-to-day out there on the ice of Saginaw Bay is tough on your gear because it's not like driving a wheat field. You're out there, you're bouncing over ice, you're crossing cracks, you're bouncing around. It's got to be tough on gear.
Yeah, and this year, as you saw the other day, is some of the smoothest ice we've had in a long time. Most years it is very rough ice, and it is very tough on your gear, on your snowmobiles, your shanties, everything involved.
So Mike, I was telling the story earlier. When we first went out, we went out to about 21 feet of water, which was a pretty good drive offshore. Set up there, nothing much happened, and then you got a hot tip and we moved, right?
Yeah, so with the weather being nice that day, I usually opt to fish off my snowmobile and try to stay mobile while I keep people, warm in the shacks. And we had buzzed around and found a few fish, but then did get a call from some friends that they had a lot of fish under them early in the afternoon, and that's why you guys all packed up and met me where I was, and we scrambled up there, and it paid off. And that's some good fishing for the evening. Yeah,
we moved into about 19 feet of water, and it was not a secret spot, right? We didn't have that spot to ourselves.
No, I typically shy away from packs like that, but the fishing has been fairly finicky lately, so when you get a hot call like that, and it's happening right now, you got to go for it.
Now, what do you mean by finicky? Are you earlier, before our trip, were you seeing fish and you couldn't get them to bite, or you just weren't seeing fish?
Yeah, every day out there, we've had several fish under the shanties, no problem being on top of fish, and through a lot of my contacts that I keep in touch with through the winter, they're experiencing the same thing. The fish are they're on a weird bite pattern. You'll get a short window of feeding. One day somebody will knock it out of the park and they can't duplicate it the next day. In years past, it's been where if you're sitting on that many fish, you're going to catch a lot of them.
The day that we were out there, we moved into 19 feet of water. After we get set up, we get a visit from the local game wardens. I told him, I said, I think he brought us luck, because shortly after he left, the fishing really turned on, Mike.
Yeah, it was probably a few minutes after that, I think, is when I packed up and moved over to your shanty, and then it was fish on until about 6:30 that night, where it finally slowed down for us.
I really did enjoy that. As you say, the process of having the rod in your hand. That's why I love jigging in the river, and that's the thing I like about ice fishing, is the rod is in your hand. But there were very few finicky fish. You could watch them come in on your electronics, and when they came in, they were looking for action for the most part.
Right. That night is exactly what we want to see when we find that kind of numbers of fish underneath of us, and we couldn't ask for a better evening. And we caught several apiece and also lost several.
Man, that's frustrating when you get a bite and you miss the fish, but I think that's just part of it, isn't it?
If I had a nickel for every time I've missed a fish like you watched me do a half a dozen times that night, I probably wouldn't even need to fish anymore.
So let's talk about the logistics. Okay, I mean, you're getting out there with sleds. A snowmobile is the preferred method of getting out there, because you can, if you have to cross a little bit of a crack, you can do it easier with a sled than a quad. And let's talk about this crossing cracks here. You would not do it if the wind conditions were not right, or if you thought it was unsafe, right?
Absolutely. When we're heading out, especially when we're checking ice early in the season, every crack, anything that looks like it could possibly separate or cause an issue at some point, gets marked on my GPS. So that way, when we're going in and out in the dark, I know that I'm coming up to something I need to stop and take a look at, because the wind doesn't have to blow very hard for that ice to move around, and you don't want to just drive into an open slot of water that you could easily avoid.
Okay, so you got sleds to get out there primarily. Then you're set up with heated shanties. You got your guys in heated fishing shacks with a heater and with electronics. It's a pretty sweet setup, Mike.
Yeah, we run all the Otter thermal shanties, big buddy heaters in every one of them. Most of my clients, they get to use basic electronics, Markhams, Vexilars. Some of them do bring their own live sonar like I'm using. But yeah, we have everything ready to go. We get out there, set them up, and it's put your butt in the seat and start fishing.
Well, and we're going to talk about that live sonar, that forward-facing sonar, after the break here in our second segment. That is pretty sweet. You also offer a service where you allow people just to follow you out. If they have their own gear, their own sled, their own shanty, but they don't quite know where to go or how to get out there. I think that is a very, very valuable, very cool service.
Yeah, we offer those follow-out services. It's $100 a person. I do prefer that the clients doing that have snowmobiles, a rigid hitch going to your shanty. We don't haul anything with ropes out there, no loose buckets. I have to look out for my fully guided clients to get them in and out in a timely manner. And part of that follow-out fee is I'm making sure you get back to shore that night, not just riding in, but if your machine breaks down, we have a problem, we're going to get you in. You're not going to be stuck out there.
Gotcha. Mike Smith of Offshore Account. We got to take a break here. When we come back, we'll talk more with Mike. His website is Offshore Account, or he says account, offshoreaccount.com. He's also on Facebook. I think he's on Instagram as well. He is the guy that I went fishing with last weekend along with my son James. Very nice service, very knowledgeable guy, very personable guy, and he put us on fish, and it was a lot of fun. He got us out there, he got us back, and it was a very, very good day. So we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll wrap up our conversation with Mike Smith of Offshore Account, and then we'll also talk with Steve Windom of MUCC, and then this week's Ask Avery segment comes up to wrap up hour 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Flint on Sports Extra 1330 WTRX. You can hear us in Holland on WHTC 1450 AM. That's 99.7 FM, Holland, Michigan. You can hear us in Holland, the country, via the podcast, but you can hear the radio show in Holland, and you can hear us north of the bridge in the Sioux on WKNW 1400 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by the company that makes this sound. The sound of my Rapid River knife locking back open. I just took it out of my pocket. It's always there. A good knife is one of the most valuable tools somebody who loves the outdoors can have. And I think if you're going to carry a knife and use a knife, why not use a Michigan-made knife made by craftsmen in the Upper Peninsula? And that's what Rapid River is. Handmade knives, custom-made knives in some situations with a lifetime guarantee. If you go to the website, rapidriverknifeworks.com, use the promo code Avery10, you get 10% off. Or if you stop into their showroom on US 2, just east of Rapid River, you can also use the promo code Avery10. If you go to the website right now, rapidriverknifeworks.com, be sure to sign up for their giveaway for an Idaho bear hunt coming up early this summer. You can sign up at the website, rapidriverknifeworks.com. Rapid River Knife Works, the company that makes this sound, that brings you this sound. You can have that sound as well by getting a Rapid River knife. RapidRiverKnifeWorks.com. Use the promo code Avery10. Talking now with Mike Smith of Offshore Account Charters on Saginaw Bay. He does summertime Saginaw Bay walleye trolling trips. He does late summer salmon fishing trips on Lake Michigan, and he does ice fishing trips on Saginaw Bay, weather permitting. And Mike, this winter, the weather has been your friend.
Yeah, it's been very good. We got an early start. We could not have better ice out there right now. I don't think we've seen less than 12 inches of ice anywhere that we've been lately.
Perfect. What's your setup, Mike? You put your anglers in their own shanty with electronics, a flasher for the most part, which I thought was wonderful until you jumped in with me and you had that forward-facing unit with you. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, so I get everybody set up in the shanties. I don't sit any more than 2 people in a shack. One or two Vexilars per shanty, and then in my shanty, my personal shanty, I'm running that Garmin Live Scope, which you got to see the other night, and that thing has been a game changer for me.
I have never seen one of those in person. Always wanted to, but what you can learn from watching these fish come into your baits is pretty cool.
Yeah, there's just a lot bigger picture that you're seeing. As you saw, we were looking 12 feet either side of the shanty, and you were seeing all those individual fish come in, how they reacted to the bait, and sometimes they came in so fast you didn't see a reaction because you already had them on your line.
Yeah, and if they would come in hugging the bottom, you didn't know they were there, and then they'd come up off the bottom and look at your bait, boom, there they were. It was a fascinating thing. My only problem was I was staring at that so much I almost forgot to fish sometimes because I was watching the fish come in.
I've been blindsided a handful of times by staring at that thing like a video game and forgetting to watch the end of the rod tip, and then the fish comes in and surprises you.
So I know what your setup is because I was out there, but let's talk about your setup and what you recommend. It looks to me like you're more of a jigging spoon guy.
Typically, I do have a lot of tackle in my sled, lots of jigging Rapalas, shiver minnows, varieties of spoons. One of my favorite rods is a dead stick with just a single hook and a split shot. And tip-ups, we run some tip-ups out there. We don't have a lot of luck on those, though.
And isn't that interesting? Because a tip-up is just like a dead stick, and a dead stick works, and tip-ups don't seem to.
Yeah, I don't really have a good explanation for that. I catch a lot of fish on dead sticks and very few on the tip-ups, and I've racked my brain on that for years and set them up the exact same way and just cannot get to seem to get them to produce.
I know. For folks who don't know, the dead stick is a rod that you're not jigging. It's laying there dead, but it's got a live minnow on it. How do you set it up?
I like a split shot about 18 inches above a single hook, and then I'll hook it right below the dorsal fin, very, very thin in the back, so I can try to keep that minnow alive and swimming.
And you set it on the bottom, just off the bottom? What?
I like to have them about 18 inches off the bottom. That'll give those fish a chance to come in and look. A lot of times they'll come in and just grab it. Sometimes they come in their window shopping, and then you can get them to bail out and come after your jigging presentation.
So it's, in some ways, it's an attractant because you've got a live minnow down there, but it's also working as an actual tool to catch fish, too.
Absolutely. I do feel like it does draw some fish into the shack and give you a chance to maybe tease them with something else that you're working in the water.
And what about your jigging stroke? We'll talk a little finer details here. When you got the jigging rod in your hand, everybody's got their own techniques, their own tactics, but what do you do? Do you bang it off the bottom? Do you leave it a little suspended? And what's your cadence?
Once in a while, I'll leave it hanging up in the water column a little bit because that'll also get the fish to come in and look. Typically, when I'm jigging, I like flutter spoons myself, and I will jig them about a foot off the bottom, and I'll let them fall and hit the bottom every time. If a fish doesn't come in and grab it immediately, but I feel like they're keyed in on that bait, which you can see on that live scope, I will shorten that jig stroke to about 6 inches and hop that spoon right in the mud. And that's what I've had a lot of success on this season so far, is them grabbing it right out of the dirt. That's when I'm getting them to bite.
And I couldn't get a feel. I don't have the experience out there that you do, obviously, but I couldn't get a feel for whether they were hitting it on the drop or they were actually picking it up off the bottom. What's your sense that night, at least?
A lot of times I feel like they were picking it up off the bottom because you would go to jig it the next time and there was weight on there. The fish had already grabbed it. If they're hitting it on the downfall, a lot of times you'll feel it kind of yank in your hand as that spoon is falling.
Gotcha. That jigging, that's a whole art form, right? I mean, it was pretty easy that night because the fish were aggressive, but there's a little finesse to it. You got to get a feel for it.
Yeah, I mean, come up with a rhythm, like I said. Mine is jigging a foot off bottom, let it fall. Don't be afraid to change it up. If it's not working, change it up. Change baits, change your jigging cadence, anything that can help. These fish have been kind of finicky lately, so you can't be afraid to experiment to get them to fire off.
And on your jigging stick, you're using live bait?
I use typically the head of a bigger minnow, or I will use a smaller walleye minnow or a perch minnow. I'll use the whole minnow on there.
And that's for scent and just something more to get their attention?
Scent and attraction, yeah. I haven't really had any luck catching them on a bare spoon. Tipped with anything, the head or the body seems to be the key.
And Mike, Saginaw Bay is a big body of water. I mean, how do you know where to go? You're relying on past experience and input from your friends out there, but what are you looking for? A particular depth, structure? I mean, there's not a huge amount of structure out there. How do you find fish?
The walleyes typically have the same migration path in and out of the bay, in the spring and the fall, coming back into the winter. We do have good luck with them shallow. We've had a good shallow bite going on. As pressure tends to mount close to the west shoreline, Linwood, State Park area, I like to move out deeper, get away from people, try to stay away from the packs, and find isolated schools of walleyes that haven't been beat up really bad by the pressure yet.
Not too far in the future, these fish are going to start thinking about, many of them, moving to the river to go up and spawn. Will you follow those fish in, or will you continue to concentrate on the big water, the reef spawners?
We will push in. We will be fishing generally within that 5-mile range of Linwood, where those fish like to come in around the dumping grounds, the river mouths. And as the ice actually starts to soften up and the weather gets a little bit warmer, we'll be walking out to 6 or 8 feet of water off the state park, and there's days where we're out jigging in T-shirts.
Well, and then after that, you're going to be out there in the boat.
That's not too far off, but it can wait a little bit. We're enjoying our ice.
I know you are. I know. And I can see. I get the appeal. Again, it's not something I want to do every weekend, but I get the appeal. It was an adventure. It was a lot of fun. But the reason it was fun was because I was out there, again, with my son James and you, Mike Smith, because you're out there all the time. I can't stress this strongly enough. If people are not locals or if they don't have a lot of experience but they want to take advantage of it, find a local, find a fishing guide, and go out with them to get you out there, to get you on the fish and get you back in. Because it's not something, I'm not saying it's dangerous at all, but if you're not paying attention, you could get yourself in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. Saginaw Bay is not a forgiving place, especially on the ice. A lot can change. You saw how that crack that we were crossing was changing throughout the day. And if you're not keeping tabs on that kind of stuff and watching it when you're going in and out in the dark, it can catch up to you really fast.
You know, that's an interesting thing. It did not blow that day. When I was out there, it was dead calm, yet the crack opened up a little bit when we came back in. Why was that? The wind didn't blow it out?
The wind had been blowing that morning, and that ice is moving, the water's moving. And I told you the story years ago how that ice opened up 30 or 40 feet on us, and it was a day where the wind only blew 6 miles an hour, and we had more ice coverage that year than we do now even. So keeping that in the back of your mind and understanding what that bay is really capable of. You know, in other years, that thing's pushed 15-inch thick ice up the beach in Linwood and almost hit houses. The water can do whatever it wants, whenever it wants. So you got to just have your head on a swivel and be safe out there.
Exactly, and you do a great job of that, Mike. And when it gets to be springtime and we're out there in the boats, I'll be talking to you because you like that skinny water as much as I do.
Yeah, I'm ready. That's the next thing around the corner is a skinny water bite.
All right, Mike Smith of Offshore Account. Appreciate you getting me out there. I would encourage people to check you out if they're interested. Book a trip with you at offshoreaccount.com, offshoreaccount.com. Mike, a pleasure. We'll let you get on with your day, and you and I will be talking.
Thanks for having me. All
right, Mike Smith of Offshore Account, one of the guys who really has not just the fishery dialed in, but the experience itself, the adventure itself. It's one thing to go out there in the summertime, which I do all the time. I feel very comfortable out there. I'm not afraid of the ice. I'm not one of those people who say ice is never safe. Oh, I'm afraid to go out there. No, not at all. But I am smart enough to know that if I'm going to go out there, I'm going to go out there with people who have the experience, who have the knowledge about being out there in the wintertime, because conditions can change, just like they can change in the summertime. You know, when I'm on that big angler quest, I am very comfortable out there. But I know what I'm doing. I have a lot of experience out there. In fact, I can't wait to get back out there with that new Angler Quest, Quest. But in the meantime, there's some great ice fishing, and I would encourage you to check it out. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, Steve Windom of MUCC checks in. I think Steve's going to kind of run down what they have coming up. I wonder if he'll reach as far out as July 25th, Friday, July 25th, for the second annual Mike Avery Outdoors Charity Golf Outing to benefit MUCC's Youth Camp. And then this week's Ask Avery segment comes up to wrap up this second hour of the Outdoor Magazine show. Glad you're with us. My name is Mike Avery. The website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address is Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on the Twister, 92.1 WTWS. You can hear us in Muskegon on WKBZ, 1090 AM. And in the Thumb, Sandusky, WMIC, 660 AM, 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Killer Food Plots, Michigan-based, family-owned Killer Food Plots. I know you're not putting in food plots right now, but you know what? It's not going to be that much longer. And while the past hunting season is still fresh on your mind and you're thinking about how you can do things better, now is a really good time to get in touch with Rich Krazan and the crew at Killer Food Plots, the website killerfoodplots.com, killerfoodplots.com. They are doing a lot of the outdoor shows across the state where you can talk with him firsthand. You can get his ideas, his advice, talk about the different seeds, how to get things going. And as we get closer to the food plot planting season, I'll have Rich here on the show. Rich and his wife, Ellie, by the way, are joining us for the big Trinity Monitor Wild Game Dinner and Auction, Saturday, March 1st. But in the meantime, you can check out their website, killerfoodplots.com. That's killerfoodplots.com. Turn our attention now to a group that I am a member of and strongly support, MUCC, Michigan United Conservation Clubs. I think they're doing a great job. Steve Windom is one of the key forces behind MUCC, and he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Steve, welcome back. How are you?
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having us. Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Always a pleasure. What's on your mind this week?
Oh, man, we've got lots going on. So, I mean, we can talk about convention, camp registration, our summer events lineup, or anything that's tickling your fancy today.
Well, let's start with convention. When's that coming up?
Convention's going to be March 7th through 9th at Treetops Resort up in Gaylord, and we're actually doing our site visit today. And then we're going to be welcoming all of our members to help us set our policy agenda and legislative agenda for the next couple of years.
And that's why this convention is so critical. This is where MUCC members and leadership decide what the course of action is coming up. This is how the policies are determined.
Yeah, it's important because the MUCC is very unique nationwide based on our grassroots policy setting process where all members have a voice in the organization and give us our marching orders. Staff don't decide what we work on. It's our members who tell us how to deal with things.
Yeah, I think that's very cool. You talked about camp. Did you say registration? Isn't it early for that?
No, yeah, I mean, we've got it open a little earlier than normal, February 10th. So the Monday after, we're going to be on the air with you on the Saturday morning show. Registration will open for our summer camp session. So we've got 7 weeks of camp, ages 9 through 16, all kind of cool themed weeks. And, you know, kids are going to shoot archery, shoot 22s, paddle and fish, and get their hunter safety certificates as well.
And how and where do they sign up?
MUCC.org. There's a link at our camp, or Michigan Outdoors Camp.org. You're going to be able to get on there, fill out registrations. There's lots of scholarship opportunities as well. So if you're worried about the price of it, we do have plenty of scholarships available to get those kids to spend the week with us and get their own outdoor heritage strengthened.
And you talked about other activities, other events coming up. What's on the calendar?
Well, we've got a full summer lineup, actually, from April till September. We've got one event every month, starting with our Camo and Conservation Banquet on the west side in April, rounding out with our Rooster Ranch event in September, which is in Ubley in the Thumb. And, of course, the Mike Avery Outdoors Charity Golf Outing on July 25th at West Branch Country Club.
The second annual Mike Avery Outdoors Charity Golf event. The first year was such a big success. You know, I'm always nervous about that. You have an event, you don't know how it's going to turn out. The first year is a big success, and you think, uh-oh, now we set the bar pretty high for the second time around.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we had a wonderful event. 108 golfers joined us that day. We raised over $10,000 net proceeds to go to support our youth camp, thanks to you and your involvement. And we're going to be looking to fill 144 slots this year and max out the course, have some great new raffle prizes and engagement opportunities, and really just have a great time celebrating Michigan's natural resources.
You mentioned engagement. I mean, that is a word that in some ways is self-explanatory, but engagement is something that you folks have really concentrated on the past couple of years.
Yeah, we've wanted to build community and have our members engage with us. You know, we're adding some great new benefits to our individual member program where you're going to get discounts at, you know, local suppliers, Michigan suppliers, national suppliers, things you're already buying. You get discounts and benefits to your membership, but also to engage with us on issues that you're seeing locally. You know, we want to make sure that we represent every outdoors man and women in the state. And so the more members we have, the louder our voice is and the more work we can do.
All right, going back to engagement and the convention then, the convention that's coming up in early March, is that open to all members or no?
Yes, every single member. All the clubs and our individual member delegates come up and they carry those votes. But even if you are not a voting delegate, you can still get on the mic and voice your opinion on a topic or an issue. Every single member of MUCC is welcome to join us at Treetops March 7th through 9th. We still have rooms available. There's still a lot of room to come. We're going to have some great opportunities to have some fun and celebrate and set that policy and legislative agenda.
Well, I actually hope to be at that event as well, Steve, and I appreciate the invitation. So we'll talk more about that. But again, do you sign up for the convention at the website mucc.org?
Yep, MUCC.org. You're going to see the events tab at the very top of the page. There's a link right there, annual convention. All your information is right there on that page. You can register, you can pay, you can get the all the information you need. The resolution book has been published, so you can see the topics we're debating. And again, whether you're a voting delegate or not, we invite you to come up and use your voice in the organization.
Good deal. MUCC.org, MUCC.org. Steve, keep up the good work, and you and I will talk again soon.
Thanks so much, Mike. Looking forward to talking soon.
Steve Windom of MUCC, again, MUCC.org, MUCC.org. We'll take a break. When we come back, this week's Ask Avery segment, and it's not just one question. It's not just two, a twofer. It is, I think, three, a threefer, coming up after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on 98.5 WUPS. You can hear us in Lansing on WILS 1320 AM, and you can hear us north of the bridge in Escanaba on WCHT 600 AM 93.5 FM. The Ask Avery segment is brought to you each week by the good folks at Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoorsmen and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. You know this by now, but the way this segment works is you send me a question. Best way to get those questions to me is via email. Send them to Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Please don't send them to me in a social media message. I might get it, might not. But if you send it to me in email, Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com, I will get it. This week, 3 different questions from 2 different people. It's a threefer. The first question from Josh Revart. He says, Mike, I've had some conversations and saw a few social media posts as well about this topic. There's a machine called a snow dog. You hook a sleigh or a small trailer to it, and it'll tow you out ice fishing or through the woods. I'd imagine you could even drag a deer with one as well. Since you do not actually ride on it, would this machine need an ORV sticker to be used for ice fishing or on a public lake? He said, just curious if you have the answer or know someone who could answer that. Josh, well, thank you for the question. I do not have the answer, but I know someone who does. His name is Sergeant Mark Depew from the DNR. I reached out to Mark. I gave him this exact question and says, Mark, do you need registration for this? He says, hi, Mike. The snow dog is not required to have a registration for as an ORV or a snow machine. There you go. That's question number 1. All right, so now for question number 2. These come from Jason Neiman. He sent me an email to Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Okay, I'm scrolling through here because I'm searching a bunch of different sources to... Oh, there we go. To give you the exact answer. Okay. He said the first question is, with the Pure Michigan Hunt. Pure Michigan Hunt. Why do you get me started? I was supposed to win. Anyway, with the Pure Michigan Hunt, what does the DNR do with the money allocated from all the entries every year? Excellent question, Jason. Again, I don't know the answer directly, so I reached out to Eric Hilliard from the DNR. He's the guy who kind of coordinates the Pure Michigan Hunt, and he's actually the guy who notifies the winners. He didn't notify me, so I got even with him. I sent him a text very early this morning and woke him up. I said, where does that money go, Eric? He said the money from the Pure Michigan Hunt goes into the Fish and Game Fund just like any other hunting license and application revenue, and is eligible for Pittman-Robertson match. So the money that we put in on the Pure Michigan Hunt and didn't win gets put into the Fish and Game Fund just like any other application. Okay, so then Jason, let me check my time here. So then Jason, I'm doing good. So then Jason has a second question. He says, Hey, Mike, a while back you were talking about a proposal to change Great Lakes trolling rod limits. Has that been dropped, or are we getting anywhere with it? Hasn't been dropped. Has not been dropped. This is a concept that I started to push a few years ago when I was out on Saginaw Bay trolling in the summertime, and I was fishing by myself, and I had 3 rods out, and I was having a hard time finding fish because I wasn't in my beloved skinny water. I was out deeper. So I had a charter boat guy come by me, and he's got a full crew, and he's got like a dozen rods in the water. I thought, well, he's going to find fish before I am because, number one, he's dialed in better than I am. But number 2, he's got 12 rods in the water legally, and I'm limited to 3. And I got thinking, why am I limited to 3 rods? If, I don't want to hurt the resource at all. But if the resource is protected by daily creel limit and size limits, how am I going to hurt the resource? Doesn't matter how many rods I run, right? So I started this campaign. In fact, I took it to MUCC, to the convention a few years ago. And because I was new to the process, I don't think I presented it as well as I could have. And it was shot down. The flag was then raised by the folks from the Great Lakes Salmon Initiative. Great Lakes Salmon Initiative said, we agree with you and we will push this as well. And I said, you know what, I will step aside because you guys are far more astute in the politics of this and the getting things through the system. I will support you and I will do everything I can to help you, but I will step aside. They also took this to the MUCC convention last year. MUCC was originally against it because they were basing that on what some members were, they were basing it on misinformation. The guys from the Great Lakes Salmon Initiative went through it point by point and pointed out how they were wrong, and MUCC then voted not to support it, but they would no longer oppose it. So that's where we are now. But you know what, Jason? I'm going to reach out to the guys at the Great Lakes Salmon Initiative, see where they're going, and see if we can't light a fire underneath this again. Because though it is not anywhere in the system right now, it's not like this summer you're going to have unlimited number of rods, but they were talking about a boat license. I think that's a great idea. So more on that in the future. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Security Credit Union, for making each week's Ask Avery segment possible. Hour number 3 coming up. Wow, a threefer.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by J Sporting Goods, the Yider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Garber Chevrolet, the West Branch Visitors Bureau, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show, right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network, on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan, and so glad to have you along with us as we continue this adventure, this celebration of the outdoor lifestyle here in our great state of Michigan and occasionally beyond. As I look at the rundown, oh boy, we've been doing a lot of ice fishing on this week's show, haven't we? There is more going on this time of year, though, right? I mean, obviously, ice fishing is getting lots of attention this year because we've got ice. Even on the big waters, we've got ice. And that's nice to see. But what else is going on? Well, you've got squirrel hunting going on. You've got rabbit hunting going on. You got predator hunting going on. But there's something else that's just getting ready to start getting fired up here now. And it'll get better over the next few weeks. I'm talking about shed hunting. The search for shed whitetail antlers. Now, they're called antlers because they shed, they drop. They're not horns. Cows have horns. I think sheep have horns. But whitetails and muleys and elk and moose, they drop their antlers. They shed their antlers every year. And the activity, the process, the passion of looking for those things is really a big deal in some circles especially and across the country. I mean, how cool would it be, say, if you were out west and find an elk shed? Wait, you don't have to go out west. You could go up to the Pigeon River Forest here in Michigan and find a shed elk antler. Or a real trophy would be go to the UP and find a shed moose. A moose shed. Wouldn't that be cool? What is a more likely target for us is finding shed whitetail antlers. Now, I used to really be into this. When the kids were small, we spent a lot of time out on the weekends and the mornings just wandering around the woods looking for sheds. Never found any real big ones, but, found enough to have it be fun. I always thought, how can we get better at this? Now I see people out there using dogs, training their dogs to find sheds. How cool is that? So I was poking around here this last few days, and I thought, I need to find a Michigan shed hunting expert to help me talk more about this. It kept coming back to one name. Everywhere I searched, everywhere I talked to, one name, Jason Herbert, Jason Herbert, Jason Herbert. So I tracked down Jason. I got him on the phone line, and he said, yep, I'm a self-proclaimed shed hunting nerd. And I thought, there's my guy right there. And he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Jason, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, thanks a lot, Mike. I'm so good. If you would have told me when I was a kid that Mike Avery would be calling me, I wouldn't have believed you. So I'm just a blessed dude, man, and I'm honored to be on the phone with you.
Well, I'm honored to talk to you. And when you say when you were a kid, now you're making me feel old, Jason.
Maybe you started when you were a teenager.
That's what it is. Thank you for that outright there. I started this when I was 15 years old.
Yes.
Jason, tell me a little bit about you. I mean, you're a Southwest Michigan guy who loves the outdoors, right?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I grew up on a small family farm, and I'm still there today. This farm's been in our family almost 200 years. Wow. And my wife and I God has just been tremendous to me. We have 4 healthy kids. I was able to recently retire from teaching. I was a teacher forever, and I've taken on a new career now in sales, and that's been a lot of fun. But I've constantly been outdoors. I'm just an outdoor kid, right? So I built a house out in the field on my dad's farm, and he's given me free rein to manage the property any way I see fit. So I'm the world's worst farmer, but we're growing some amazing whitetails.
I am fascinated by this concept of being on the same family farm for 200 years. Did you say 200 years? No.
We're pushing it. Yeah, we're
really?
Pushing it. It's not quite there yet, but we're past the 150-year mark, and I forget the technical name for it. So there's Centennial Family Farm, and then we're past another 50 years.
Sesquicentennial?
It sounds familiar.
We'll go with that, all right?
Fair enough.
But
I'm sure we'll get some comments.
Well, I'm sure we will. Believe me, I'm used to that. But that is a huge deal. That is a big deal. So this farm that's been in your family for generations, you're now on it. You're now living there. You're now managing the property. You're hunting deer there, and you're looking for sheds there too, I would imagine.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's this is perfect timing. I have right now there's 8 bucks living behind the house that I've kept an eye on, and 7 of them have completely shed, and that all happened in the last 2 weeks. Like,
really?
Once that cold snap hit, it was game on. We got one little rinky-dink running around that's still carrying his full set. And there's a lot of factors that go into this, right, Mike? Like the amount of stress. We had another buck last fall that shed during December, and he actually got shot by a neighbor accidentally during the late doe season. He was injured. And, from a distance, near dark, looked like he was a good-sized doe. Turned out he was a 1.5-year buck that had already shed because he was injured. He was stressed, so he shed early. But most of the bucks these last couple of weeks have been so darn cold that most of them shed then.
Well, boy, you bring up a couple of interesting points right there. Let's stick with the bucks dropping early and then being shot as does. Is that a concern of yours, especially with the late doe season we had here in Michigan this year?
For me, yes. for me, yes. And man, we could go down a whole nother rabbit hole here. But yeah, I'm also aware of quite a few young buck fawns that got shot during that late season, and it's hard to tell. I've accidentally done that myself. They're chubby.
I have years ago. Yeah.
Puffed.
Yeah.
Yeah, their hair's puffed up. They're usually the first ones to show up. They're not too afraid of you, and it's an easy shot for somebody that's looking to put some meat in the freezer. So yeah, that is a concern. And then the wounded bucks later in the season, who knows if the coyotes would have got them or whatever. I'm always of the mindset that if you have a tag in your pocket and you see a wounded animal, it's your duty to harvest that animal, put it out of its misery. But some shed bucks got shot this late December.
So in my limited knowledge of this, I was thinking, okay, bucks shed because of testosterone level goes down. It's got to be tied into the amount of daylight. And you're saying other weather factors too, as far as when it gets cold, that's a stressor on them too. So it's the time of year, plus when you add stress to it, that's when they start to drop.
Yeah, I think there's a whole myriad of things that go into the factor. Like our really nice dominant bucks do most of the breeding. They come out of that season exhausted, and they're chasing those late doe fawns that go into heat in December too. And they roll into the end of the year, they are simply exhausted. So this buck group that I'm telling you behind my house, those guys eat like pigs. They're like teenage boys. They eat all day long. They're very vulnerable because they're on the brink of survival or not. And if they don't get the proper nutrition and such, especially in a winter like this, they're not gonna make it. So yeah, they shed super early this year. Now I've found there's been mild years. You were talking about ice fishing, and we're having a great ice fishing season this year, but there's been mild years where we never got any ice. And because of that, I found numerous sheds around ponds and around the edge of old water holes in the middle of a cornfield and such. So, the phrase I use with people is when we're talking shed hunting is they are where they are. And that doesn't make a whole lot of sense on the surface level, but when you dig into it, the antlers are going to be where the deer were spending most of their time during that shedding period. So, yeah, I think light, my daylight has something to do with it. Testosterone levels have something to do with it. But I'm on the camp of it's more or less about social and environmental stresses.
Well, you obviously keep a close eye on the local deer herd. I mean, you've got 8 bucks behind the house. Most of them have shed. Jason, will you find the sheds from all of those bucks?
I'm going to say I hope so. I'm going to I've walked the trails. I've walked a couple of food plots. We're not getting too aggressive yet. I'm going to wait till the snow melts off, and then I'm going to dig deep into their bedding area. The bedding area I have is actually on my neighbor's property that nobody hunts, so I treat it like my sanctuary. And the neighbor's totally on board with that. He likes the fact that I treat it that way and whatnot. But anyway, I'm not gonna Rambo into that until I think it's safe to really start looking, probably end of February, early March. So, but will I find all of them? No. If out of 8 bucks, that's 16 antlers. If I can find 10, I'll be happy.
Well, I think those are pretty good odds. Real quick before we go to a break, can you get overly aggressive and actually stress the bucks by pushing them too hard to look for sheds in a winter like this?
Oh, absolutely. And it happens all the time. And 2 things happen. Yeah, you put unnecessary stress on the animal, and he leaves your property and sheds on your neighbor.
Yeah. All right, Jason, hang tight. We're talking with Jason Herbert. You can find Jason, by the way, on Facebook. When you find his page, it's Jason Herbert. It's him holding a big moose shed, if I remember, and then also a big whitetail he shot. I think it was last fall. So Jason Herbert on Facebook. We'll take a break here. When we come back, we'll talk more about the specifics, the details. Where do you look? How do you look? How do you find them? I think it's like mushroom hunting. Some people just have one eye and some don't. But you can train your eye, and we'll talk with Jason about how to do that and more after the break, after coming up here on Outdoor Magazine after the break. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Ludington on News 97, 98, 98.7 WLDN. You can hear us on the other side of the state, Tawas, WIOS, 1480 AM, 106.9 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Manistee, WTIQ, 1490 AM, 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by the Truck Trolley. Andy Weiss is the guy I work with on Truck Trolley. It's a family-owned, Michigan-based business, and they came up with this concept of, listen, in my truck, I used to have what my son used to jokingly call an old man hook until I saw him start to use an old man hook, because you don't want to climb up into the bed of your truck to get that stuff all the way at the front, right? So in the past, I had this hook that I would reach up there and hook onto it and pull it back. Well, Andy Weiss came up with this product called a Truck Trolley, and it is removable, and it's on wheels, so you can pull out this floor of the truck, the bed of your truck. You can pull it out to access the entire bed of your truck. The thing is so cool. Jason Beck of Covington, Indiana, sent me an email, and he said, "Hey, Mike, just another benefit of listening to your show was the fact that I found out about Truck Trolley. I got mine last week, and what a product. Not only the product, but Andy's customer service was second to none. Already trying to talk my dad into getting one." See, that's the type, when you get a response like that, you know you're working with a good company. TruckTrolley.com, TruckTrolley.com. Andy has donated a truck trolley for our big Trinity Monitor Wild Game Dinner and Auction Saturday, March 1st. So if you show up, you might win a truck trolley there. TruckTrolley.com, that's TruckTrolley.com. Right now, I am talking with a guy who loves the outdoors. He is a Southwest Michigan guy. His name is Jason Herbert. And we're talking about the concept of finding shed whitetail antlers. They call it shedding. Jason, how many different sheds do you find in an average late winter, early spring?
Oh, gosh. When I say find, too, I'm talking about my dad, my wife, my sons. So like a team,
sure,
right?
Sure.
If we could get a couple dozen, that'd be a great year. So there's been some years where I've only found one. None, right? None is still my average. But these last couple of years, I've gotten so serious about it. Like, if I can find 2 dozen this year, I'll be really happy.
All right, so earlier you said they are where they are. You'll find them where you'll find them. And I get that completely. But where do we start?
What I like to do, like right now, I have some, my food plots are also trails behind my house, okay? So I have turnip trails that are food plots that the deer travel on. I'm going to start looking pretty hard on those when the snow melts. And then I have a couple destination food plots that are a clover winter wheat mixture, and I'll start looking in those pretty hard as well, because it's low risk stuff. Like, you go in there in the middle of a food plot in the day, the deer aren't bedding literally right next to it, so you're not going to booger it up too bad. And then I start with an outside in approach. So then I'll start hitting the trails. As we get further in the spring, I'll hit the trails between the food sources and their bedding areas. And then my last ditch effort to find them right around the first weekend of March is when I'm busting through the bedding areas.
And how do you actually see them? I mean, wouldn't it be nice if they just dropped and they laid real fluffy on top of the snow and you could see the whole thing? But that's not always the case. Sometimes they're covered with snow. Sometimes they're hiding behind logs and branches. I mean, how do you train yourself to see them?
It probably wouldn't be so much fun if they were that easy.
Yeah, true.
First thing I want to recommend, and I haven't quite invented these yet, but like, wear a pair of protective safety glasses. And I like the yellow tinted shooting glasses. I think work great. I'd like to invent some sort of lens that like makes the antler pop while you're protecting your eyes.
Yeah.
So maybe you and I can go in on that, Mike. But
yeah.
So wear safety glasses, and then I try to look for parallel. Like the tines kind of shooting up that are a little bit parallel. Parallel in nature is not really natural, as far as the sticks and twigs and stuff like that. So that's kind of an indicator. Look for colors, off colors. I don't know why, but after a night of rain or a misty morning, antlers pop. I mean, you could see them a mile away on those overcast, misty conditions. I have seen some upside down, but for the most part, when they fall, they're going to fall with the beam down and the tines pointing up. So I look for the parallel points.
I've heard of people who will actually use binoculars and stand off to the side, say, of a food plot and search with binoculars. Have you tried that at all? Does that help at all?
No. Well, I'm not going to say I haven't tried that. I have tried that in the past on really big properties. I'm in it just as much to get exercise, so I like actually putting in the steps. There's a lot of guys that will never get off their UTV and just drive around with binoculars, and they might find the giant ones, but they're missing a lot of the little ones. So I personally don't do that. I just kind of get out and walk around a lot.
I get that it is a real treat to find a big shed from a big buck, but it's a lot harder to find those little tiny ones from a little spike. I mean, that in some ways is as much of a trophy as a big buck.
Yeah, it really is. We found several spikes, and it's like, that's hard to find. I've seen, 140 class sheds from a mile away. Anybody can stumble on those, but if you found a 2-point shed or a single spike that's 3 inches long, that's something to be proud of.
There you go. Did I also read, Jason, that you have taken this to the next level by using your dogs to help you find sheds?
I'm going to say used to, Mike. I used to. So I got really into that, and I worked with a guy named Jeremy out of Wisconsin. Dogbone was his company. He's super cool, and he kind of mentored me. He's a great dog trainer. And I want to say it's Jeremy Moore, but don't quote me on that, but I think that's who he is. Yeah, and I have a golden retriever and a chocolate lab, and man, we were a team. We had a lot of fun, and they were finding antlers, and then it got to be competitive between the two of them. So they would find an antler and then run away with it, fighting each other for it, and I would never find it again. And then in the downtime when they weren't finding antlers, they were just feasting on deer poop, and these are the same dogs that come home and lay on my couch all night and kiss my kids on the face and stuff. And I'm like, oh, this isn't working out well. So now the shed hunting is just us humans. And I like my chocolate lab, Molly, she, I got her sniffing out morel mushrooms too. Like, I think dogs are really only limited by their owners' imaginations, right?
Yeah.
And she was sniffing out morels, but then she started eating them. And then I was hollering at her for eating them. And then, the confusion on her face was just too much for her to bear. So shed hunting with dogs is amazing. I would recommend you only take one, and you really stay up to date on their immunizations and vaccinations and stuff, because they're going to ingest a lot of things that you don't want in their bellies.
I feel like
there's an article.
Oh, go ahead.
There's an article I wrote. I used to do a ton of writing in the outdoor industry. In 2019, I'm proud to say I was the MUCC Michigan Outdoor Writer of the Year even. So I had great success with that. But one of the things I used to write a lot about was shed hunting. And there's an article I wrote for Grit magazine, who's partnered up with Mother Earth News, about training dogs to hunt shed antlers. And you can still Google that. I don't know if it's on Mother Earth News website or Grit's website anymore, but your listeners can still Google that and read all my thoughts on training the dogs.
It is out there. I found it on Grit. That's why I got down this line of conversation. But you bring up morels, mushrooms. I feel like mushroom hunting is a lot like shed hunting in some ways.
Absolutely, and that's why I like bringing my younger kid. I mean, my youngest kid now is 15, but when he was a little guy, man, he would squat down on his knees and just have a different angle on things to find the sheds under the logs and in the brush and such that you talked about earlier. Also, don't be afraid to look up. We walk around looking down the whole time. They do hang up in brush, especially like the autumn olive thickets and stuff. You'll find sheds just hanging in the brush 3-4 feet off the ground.
I never thought of that. I never thought to look up off the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And those are the ones you miss. And that's the other thing. Like, when you find one, just stop. Just immediately freeze. Just take in the moment. Just appreciate the moment. Like, you're about ready to put your hands on something that God created that no man has ever touched before. And that's a beautiful spiritual moment if you let it be that. And also look around, because there very well could be the match you not seeing. So there's been several times where my dad will follow me and bring up the match of one that I walked right by.
I love what you just said, though, about picking up this antler. It's something that no man has ever touched before. That's a very cool way of looking at this. And you bring up the matched set. I mean, that's the holy grail, right? Finding a shed is wonderful, but finding the other side, I guess I don't care what size it is, finding the other side of that's a big deal.
It's pretty cool, yeah. And sometimes they're together. Sometimes you got to look weeks apart. Sometimes they're hundreds of yards apart. You just never know the story. But, man, finding a match set's really fun.
I imagine you've got cameras out all over your property. Have you ever caught one in the process of shedding on camera?
Not yet. I say yet. Not yet. I've seen the YouTube's videos and such. Hasn't happened to me yet. But I saw one of mine the other day came out when he shed a couple weeks ago, and his head was covered with blood. And the bigger ones, they'll lose one, and then they work pretty aggressively to get the other one off because they don't like that unbalance. And I think he was fighting pretty hard to get that other one off, and he had blood trickling down towards his nose.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to put myself in I don't want to give an animal human characteristics, but I've tried to put myself in the mind of a buck that dropped one side of his rack, and for months now he's been carrying this thing around. He's used to the feel of it, and then boom, it's gone. It's like, I don't like this. Let's get rid of the other one too.
Yeah, I think that's how the bigger ones, right? More often or not, you'll find bigger match sets.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Yeah, because a little guy drops, he doesn't even know it was there to begin with.
Nope, probably didn't even know we had him.
Jason Herbert, listen, this has been a real pleasure to talk with you. And now that I know how to get in touch with you, I will put you in my digital Rolodex, and look out, because I will reach out to you again.
Please do. Yeah, I was just thinking about it. Really, this is such an honor. And you had like Greg Avison and Tom Campbell, and like these are good guys, and they're great people for Michigan conservation, and you as well. And I'm just honored to be amongst you all. But I think it'd be fun to do a weekly mushroom hunting update sometime in April, May-ish. I think that would be a lot of fun for your listeners.
All right, Jason, I agree, and I will be back in touch with you. Jason Herbert, you can find him on Facebook, Jason Herbert on Facebook, and you'll know it's him because he's holding a great big old moose shed. And a picture of a big buck that he shot right here in Michigan. Jason Herbert on Facebook. We'll take a break. When we come back, a few more things to wrap up, and then we'll wrap it all up with Wild Game Chef Dixie Dave Minar. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Manistee on WMLQ 97.7 FM. And you can hear us in Traverse City as well on WTCM 580 AM. And you can hear us on the other side of the state, WSGW 790 AM, 100.5 FM. I'm in the studios of WSGW right now. For these 3 hours, I'm calling it the Outdoor Magazine studio. So far, I've only had a little bit of pushback. Just a little bit from Jonathan, and he's not here to defend himself right now, but I think we got him to go along with it. I am here with Charlie Rood, and Charlie, because the sun is shining, and it's kind of cold, but if you look at it, yep, see, there's about 4 cars out there filled with families of people, and the younger kids are holding signs, and they're saying, Charlie, Charlie, Charlie. So I'm here with Charlie Rood, who's doing a great job, as always. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Linwood Beach can be your year-round Saginaw Bay fishing destination. Coming up here on Saturday, March 1st, Linwood Beach is having their 3rd annual Linwood Beach Marina Boating and Fishing Forum. Doors open at 9, seminars at 10. They'll go until 4. Free admission. Guest speakers include Jake Romanak, Captain Jason Graham, Bobby Sullivan, all charter captains, special guest, Brad Dupuis of Angler Quest Boats, QUEST. Excellent. And that's coming up. Oh, they got lunch at 11:30-ish, 12:30 seminars. Excellent. Check them out online at linwoodbeachmarina.com. That's linwoodbeachmarina.com. Linwood Beach is also a great place to head out in the water. Frozen water even of Saginaw Bay. That's what I had a chance to do last weekend, my son James invited me out. I said, James, I got no way. He said, look, we got the sleds, we got the quads, we got the shanties, we got the gear. You got to come out with us. And I did, and it was a riot. Went out with Mike Smith of Offshore Account. It was a riot. Now, it's not something that I will do every weekend, and it's not something that I can say, okay, I've developed a passion for this that I just can't live without. This is something that I think I will do once or twice a winter. Now that I figured out the key, right? And the key is to go out there with people who have the gear, who have the knowledge, who have the experience, and you're just basically tagging along with them. It did. It was a lot of fun. Hey, a quick reminder, too, about our big Trinity Monitor Wild Game Dinner and Auction that is coming up also Saturday, March 1st, same day as the Linwood Beach event. Although Linwood Beach is done by 4, our doors don't open until 4:30, so you could do both. Trinity Monitor Wild Game Dinner and Auction to benefit my church. It's not my church. I'm a member of the church Trinity Monitor in Bay County, to our church and our school, our parochial school. We have a small but very viable, vibrant parochial school. And, churches and schools need to raise money because there are things that need to be done. There are facilities that need to be maintained, and, that's why we have this dinner. This is our 8th annual dinner. The first one came about because of a conversation between me and a guy named Lyle Cloa at a pastor's appreciation dinner. It was actually at Oscar and Joey's Roadhouse, Dixie Dave's restaurant, 8 years ago. And at the time, I had been doing fundraising events for churches across the state, and I got looking around thinking, well, I'm happy to do these for all these other churches, but why are we not doing anything? And out of that little conversation has grown this. 8 years ago, it's grown into a big event. We will have a live auction. We will have a silent auction. We will have gun raffles. We will have 50-50. Door prizes. Some of the items that we're auctioning off, including an African safari, an Illinois whitetail hunt, a Michigan bear hunt with Johnny Bowler, the bear whisperer, shoulder mount from Scott Keatsman, as I said, a lot of guns, a Rapid River knife, Wraith blinds, a coyote hunt with Matt Schock, a truck trolley. Andy Weiss is giving away a truck trolley. We have 3 different youth hunts that we are auctioning off. A day of walleye fishing with me on Saginaw Bay, and other fishing trips as well. It's really turned into a big event. It is a great event. It is a lot of fun. Now, tickets are on sale now. We will sell out, though. We have every year of the 8 years we've done this, we have sold out, and I suspect we will sell out again this year. So don't wait until the last minute. The website to get these, and we got to work on this, it's a little cumbersome. It's like one.bidpal.net/Trinity Monitor Dinner Auction 2025. That's a lot to remember. If you go to my Facebook page, which is Mike Avery Outdoors on Facebook, that's pretty easy to remember. And at the top of the page, I have pinned a post, which means it stays there, with a flyer of the event, a QR code you can scan, and ways you can get the tickets. We also have a silent auction that you can sign up for and be a part of the silent auction, even if you can't make the event. All the details are on that flyer on my Facebook page, Mike Avery Outdoors on Facebook. Going to be a great event. It's coming up Saturday, March 1st at the Great Hall in Midland. Great food, great fellowship, great fun, great prizes. It's just great all the way around, and I hope to see you there. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, we're going to wrap up the show with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. And I know, even though I haven't talked to him yet, I know that he has a squirrel recipe this week. And you know how I know that? Because last week on the show, we were talking about squirrel hunting. And I said, Dave, let's do a squirrel recipe. And he said, gotcha. Because this guy's got years of experience, and he's got a cookbook that's huge. And if you give him a task, whether it's a dish or a way of cooking, he can look it up. And he usually doesn't even have to look it up. He's got it in his memory. So we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar as we wrap up this week's Outdoor Magazine. Thank you so much for joining us this week here on the Outdoor Magazine radio show. I do appreciate you being along with us. Your time is very valuable, and there are a lot of things you could be doing with your time right now. So the fact that you're hearing my voice, whether you're listening to the broadcast version of the show or the podcast, does mean a lot. If you have been with us before, you know that I like to wrap up each week's show with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. Great guy, very talented guy, and just a sweetheart of a guy. And he's with us now, once again, on the phone line. David, welcome back. How are you?
Really good, Mike. A nice fish you showed on your page.
I made it on the ice.
Wow. How many years has it been?
I was trying to think of that. I bet you it's been 20 years since I've been out on the ice of Saginaw Bay in the wintertime walleye fishing.
Wow.
But yeah.
Nice fish, though.
Real nice fish. Yeah, we got into some nice fish. It was an awful lot of fun. And I gave every one of those fish away, Dave.
I'm sure you did.
you know me and fish. I love to catch them, but I don't enjoy cleaning them, and I don't like eating them. But I know you do.
I do, right.
And I think you like to eat squirrels, too.
I do. Well, I used to hunt squirrels a lot. I haven't done so much this year, but on page 153, we have a rabbit with sauerkraut, which we did for the TV show. I remember that was for sure. And so we've adapted it to squirrels, and I've made this at home quite a few times past years. So you could use, if you're going to use rabbit, you want a couple of wild rabbits or one large tame one, or if you're going to do squirrels like we're doing today, we want 4 squirrels at least, cut by 6 or 8. And if you use a shotgun, make sure you find all of the pellets, the BBs in the meat. You don't want to be biting into that when you're chomping down on a good meal. And you need about a quart of sauerkraut, 1 or 2 tablespoons of caraway seed, which really adds to the flavor of this meal a lot. You need a cup of onions chopped fine, about 3/4 of a cup of cooked bacon chopped medium, not too fine. And you need 2 cups of apples, peeled and sliced thin, put them on the side. You need a cup of white wine, or you can use water if you didn't want to use any wine. It makes a good difference, in the flavor at the end. And you need 4 or 5 cloves of garlic diced up fine. I like a lot of garlic for this dish because the sauerkraut's pretty strong. So you want to saute the bacon slowly, and you want to save the oil on the side, and cut the squirrel into 6 to 8 pieces, dredge it in flour, and in a large saute pan with some of that bacon fat, heat it up, not smoking hot, but pretty hot, and then place the rabbit pieces, or squirrel or rabbit pieces, in a pan and brown it on all sides. Remove the squirrel and add the onions and minced garlic to saute that up a little bit. And you're going to put the meat in a casserole so you can bake it. And you want to you only need to saute the onions and the garlic for a couple of minutes slowly. And if you might need to add a little more bacon fat, go right ahead. And then add the caraway seeds, the sauerkraut, the white wine. Heat that up real good, and then pour that over the rabbit or squirrel, whichever you're going to use. And for about an hour, hour and a half at least. Some squirrels might be old and tough, so you check it before you serve it. And then a half hour before the meat is done, you want to stir in the sliced apples, and stir it in gently. You don't want to break up the meat in case some of the squirrels are already done. You don't want to pop the meat off of the bones. And this would be great with like small boiled potatoes, the little ones you buy in the grocery store. That's a great way to do it. And it's a good way to use the squirrels and or rabbit.
It sounds wonderful. I remember this, but I don't remember the caraway seeds, and I don't remember you using caraway seeds in, I don't think, anything before. Tell me about those.
Well, caraway seeds are have a real nice flavor. They're quite pungent when you're cooking them, and it adds a lot of flavor to any dish, So
are they a small seed or a big seed?
Oh yeah, about as big as a grain of rice.
Oh, okay.
Yep. They're real nice, flavorful additions, and a lot of European people would use it in different dishes.
Gotcha. This is on page 153 of the cookbook. If I remember, because I forgot last week, I will put this on the Mike Avery Outdoors Facebook page. And before we let you go, David, I'll ask you again, how is the new cooking gig going at the King's Dish in Standish?
Real good. When you air this, if people listen to this on Friday or Saturday, we're going to be doing Walleye New Orleans for a special.
Oh, boy.
And steak au poivre.
Oh, boy. Darn it.
And then for Valentine's Day, we're going to be doing prime rib.
Wow. You've got some good specials coming up. The Walleye New Orleans and the steak au poivre, both signature dishes. All right, that's King's Dish in Standish. David, I got to let you go, but I'll look forward to talking to you again next week, my friend.
Thank you. All right. Bye.
Wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar, a big part of the Outdoor Magazine show. But you know what? You're the biggest part, because if you weren't listening, there'd be no reason to do this. And I don't know what I would do. I honestly don't. I'm too young to retire. Well, I'm actually not, but I don't want to retire. I enjoy this. I enjoy talking about the outdoors. I enjoy sharing these outdoor experiences with you. I would encourage you to go to the website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Check out the email address. Use the email address, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Get your tickets for our Trinity dinner, and I'll talk to you next time right here on Outdoor Magazine.